Phil Savage from SiriusXM and from the Reese's Senior Bowl. So, Phil, thanks for being with us.
Well, you're welcome. I'm sorry we got cut off there for a moment, but bottom line is the Reese's Senior Bowl is my anchor job, and I've had a number of opportunities that have developed out of that. In addition to my color analyst work for the Crimson Tide Sports Network, which has really gone by very fast over the last 5 years, going into season number 6 with Eli Golden and the rest of our crew.
Right, and you do a great job with that. And just talk about the Senior Bowl a little bit this year and some of the highlights. It's really grown into a huge event now with the NFL Network televising it, and congratulations on that. And I thought that was a great event and enjoyed watching it.
Well, thank you so much. This is my second game basically running it, and, over the past calendar year, we were able to secure a title sponsor in Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, which obviously is a division of the Hershey Company. And, that gives us a great latitude to do more and make it an even bigger event and a better run organization for the players, for the 32 NFL teams that come to Mobile to evaluate these prospects. And then, of course, our local community, which really supported the game this year. We had nearly 40,000 fans show up on Saturday, and it's quite an institution and a tradition down here in Mobile.
Right, and talk a little bit. I'm reading of Savage's, some of the players you had down there, a few Clemson connections we had. Talk about the way Taj Boyd played down there. Do you think he helped or hurt his draft stock in the Senior Bowl?
Well, of course, we had Taj Boyd and Brandon Thomas here in our game, and Taj obviously played in a shotgun-oriented, spread-type system at Clemson. This is his first real experience since college to be, under center almost exclusively in a pro style of attack with pro coaching. And, of course, he was with the Atlanta Falcons staff. But, I thought Taj flashed some of the ability that he showed at Clemson, was not particularly consistent with it. But I think that everybody in the league understands that, in these all-star games, it's really more about the individual than what the team is accomplishing. I mean, even though it's a team sport, the players are really evaluated on their individual merit. So that's sometimes tough to do as a quarterback because you're dependent upon other people. But my personal feeling on Taj is that I think you're going to see him go somewhere on day 3 of the draft, the 4th round or later. That's a bit of a trend in the NFL in terms of teams are filling needs with position players in the first 3 rounds outside of those top-rated quarterbacks, and then in round 4 and later, they're taking a shot on quarterbacks that they think could develop.
Right, and talk a little bit about, we'll move to the state of Alabama, obviously with you calling the Alabama football games. Talk a little bit about, saw a lot of tweets about Dee Ford, the Auburn defensive end, and the game he had. And touch on A.J. McCarron. I know you've probably been asked this a lot, but about passing up on the Senior Bowl. Do you think that will help or hurt him in the long run?
Well, with Dee Ford, of course, he's the defensive end from Auburn and missed some games early in the year, but from the middle portion of the season through the Iron Bowl into the BCS championship game against Florida State and certainly into our week here in Mobile, he really has stood out in terms of his edge pass rush ability. Dee's got a lot of quickness. He's got a knack for getting to the quarterback. Unfortunately, he was not able to work out at the combine. But I do think the 3-4 teams will look at him as an outside backer. He's a bit undersized as a pure 4-3 defensive end. But nevertheless, because of that ability to get out after the quarterback, I think you'll see him go no later than the 2nd round if the medical situation is cleared up between now and the draft, which I think it will be. Now, with A.J. McCarron, of course, he's from Mobile and was a player that did his high school playing here at St. Paul's Episcopal School. And, of course, I watched every snap that A.J. has played in college and called all of his games. But, with him, I don't think it was about what he had shown in the 40-plus games that he played at Alabama. I do think it was a missed opportunity in terms of working with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had the 3rd pick And then their second-round pick is right there at 34, 35, somewhere in that range. So, I think it was a missed opportunity in terms of that one particular club. Now, he did come back and had a nice throw-in workout at the Combine, but I do think that there is some concern about his overall athletic explosiveness in his lower body in terms of the ability to escape, reset his feet, and throw a ball on the money and move the chains. And I think that's something that the scouts and coaches will try to see at their pro day at Alabama coming up March the 12th.
Right, and looking at the Senior Bowl overall, who are some of your top performers in your mind and really stood out this year down there in Mobile?
Well, we had a number of players that really had good weeks. Aaron Donald from the University of Pittsburgh was one of the defensive players of the year. Just about won every award out there. Had a terrific week here. Carried that over to the Combine. He ran in the 4.6s at 285 pounds. I think now you'll see him go somewhere in the number 10 to number 20 slot in the first round. The Cowboys would have an interest in him at number 16. So, he would be a player to keep an eye on. Zach Martin, the offensive lineman from Notre Dame, also had a very good week here. Most are forecasting Zach somewhere in that 15 to 25 in the back half of the first round. He's got guard and tackle versatility, could even maybe play center in the future. But those are two, one offensive lineman, one defensive lineman that stood out here during our week.
Right, they really did. And just talk a little bit about, before we move on to the Combine, the impact, how the Senior Bowl has grown, obviously with the sponsors, with Reese's and being on the NFL Network, and, what it does for Mobile, that week, and how much of an impact it has on the community.
Well, from a community standpoint, of course, the most recent study showed that the Senior Bowl had anywhere from a $15 to $20 million impact on the economy here. And, outside of Mardi Gras, Mobile and the Reese's Senior Bowl, those are the two things that this town is known for, Mardi Gras and the Senior Bowl. So it certainly gives us a chance to shine a light on the Gulf Coast and the Mobile area in general. This year, we had 3 players from our own city that were in the game: Jay Prosh from Auburn, Jimmy Ward from Northern Illinois, and of course, we had a shot at AJ, and CJ Mosley also was from Mobile, and then Solomon Patton, the receiver from Florida, was in our game. So it's a great area for football. There's been a lot of support for the game here, but from an NFL standpoint, it's an opportunity to evaluate the players and make some comparisons. In other words, for an example, Jimmy Ward from Northern Illinois is on the same field, with other safeties that might be from bigger schools, and you can look in one drill and begin to rate those players 1 through 8 or 1 through 10 based on the different activities that they go through here during the week. So it is an important step in the pre-draft evaluation period. I'm not going to say it's the most important step, but it's certainly one that's helpful to the NFL clubs.
Right, and once again, we're talking with Phil Savage, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl and the Crimson Tide color analyst, along with Eli Gold that calls all of their football games. And let's move on to the NFL, the Combine, and just talk about, some of your top performers there. I see Greg Robinson, and obviously in the state of South Carolina here, a lot of interest in Sammy Watkins and Jadeveon Clowney.
Yes, sir. Of course, there's 4 days of workout, so we try to identify the single most impressive player with each passing day. And I thought on Saturday it was Greg Robinson, the offensive tackle from Auburn, 6'5", 332 pounds, ran a 4.9 in the 40. Just had a tremendous workout. I think he solidified himself as a top 5 pick. Then Sammy Watkins on day 2, when the skill players hit the field, I thought Sammy lived up to all the billing as one of the best athletes in the country. He was absolutely silky smooth in all of his routes. He ran well. He tested out extremely well. And I think, sometimes it's tough for these teams to take a wide receiver in the top 10 because, there's such depth at the position almost throughout the draft, but I do think because of his elite status, you're going to see him potentially go in the top 5 and certainly no later than the top 10. Then on Monday, we shifted to the defensive side of football. I mentioned Aaron Donald earlier. The defensive tackle from Pittsburgh had an exceptional day. And then on Tuesday, we got into the defensive backs. And, you know, Justin Gilbert from Oklahoma State was a player that had a tremendous workout. But I thought the player that really grabbed the attention of the scouts, because there's been some question about how he played during the year, was Bradley Roby, the corner, a junior from Ohio State. He ran in the 4.3s and had a very solid showing in all the defensive back drill.
Right, and obviously with Jadeveon, well, let's move on to talk a little bit about Johnny Manziel. Do you think he'll end up being the number 1 overall pick this year, or where would you place him?
Well, I'm a fan of Johnny Manziel. Of course, you know, Bama has played A&M each of the last 2 years. I've seen him in person on 2 different occasions, watched probably 8 or 10 of his games. I'm falling on the side of the fence that thinks that he can have a successful pro career. It's going to take a circumstance where the head coach and the coordinator and the organization embrace the idea of having an ad-lib type of quarterback, and you're going to have to build a system that really accommodates what his skill set is. But love the competitiveness. I think he's got enough arm. He's certainly got enough athletic ability. I don't know if he'll go number 1 overall for a couple reasons. Number 1, he did measure under 6 feet. Number 2, the history of Bill O'Brien, the new head coach, has been more with the taller pocket-style quarterbacks. And number 3, I just think that they may end up seeing more value in a non-quarterback position at that point of the draft, figuring that they may be able to pick up a different quarterback later. Now, with the Texans, again, I think that's the deliberation for them. Do we go with the Johnny Manziel or one of the other quarterbacks versus a non-QB like a Jadeveon Clowney, maybe a Greg Robinson, maybe even a Jake Matthews or Khalil Mack from the University of Buffalo? Those are all players, probably 6 or 7 of them, that could go number 1 this year. Right,
and talk a little bit about, obviously here with Clowney, and not sad to see him go, but he was, you know, hyped up in the offseason, had kind of a disappointing year and an impressive 40 time, but some of his strength has been canceled with his bench press. Just talk about that a little bit and where some of the things you're hearing about where he's going to end up.
Yeah, I think the Jadeveon Clowney story is interesting because, I mean, this is a player that was rated number 1 in the country coming out of high school, got to Carolina, had 2 really productive years, and then this year, for a variety of reasons, some of his own doing, some of circumstances, he ends up with 3 sacks on the entire year. And this is a man that stands over 6'5", 266 pounds, runs 4.5 in the 40. You would think almost just through osmosis he could fall into double-digit sacks. Interestingly enough, LaMarcus Joyner, the undersized corner safety at Florida State, coming off the slot, had 6 sacks. So he doubled the output of what Clowney had as a cornerback at Florida State. So I think that's what has left people scratching their head. How does somebody with this kind of elite talent only have 3 sacks all year? Now, you know, there are some games where by formation he was double and triple teamed, or at least had a couple of sets of eyeballs on him to try to keep him under control. But there were other games where he was clearly single block. He just didn't get a lot done. I do, in fact, think that at his pro day, April the 2nd, those coaches, particularly the position coaches, are really going to try to dig in and make him work for 45 minutes or a solid hour. I think they're really going to put him to the test, put his feet to the fire, and see how he responds, because as we've seen, this is a player that in some ways has not finished anything this year. He certainly did not finish his year like people expected, did not have a single sack in his last 35 quarters of play. Almost unheard of with that kind of ability. It did not match up, and that's why people are left to wonder, what are we really getting here? if we take him number 1 or number 5. I mean, with all this discussion, in spite of all of that, he's still going to go in the top 6 regardless.
Right, and Phil, we really appreciate the time. Have you and is Winchell's Oyster House still in Mobile? It's a great little old place down there.
Winchell's is not only still in Mobile, but they've actually franchised themselves. They've got a number of locations across the state of Alabama and a location in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, if you can believe that.
All right, well, enjoy that for us, and keep up the great work with the Senior Bowl, and we always the great national championship coverage you guys had. I enjoy listening to you every day, and thanks again for coming on with us, and we'll definitely get you back on, and enjoy your little time off here, I guess, coming up after the draft. So thanks again.
I appreciate it. You guys go to our website, SeniorBowl.com, or follow us on Twitter at SeniorBowlPhil. Got a lot of information, of course, to stay up to date all the way through the draft. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Phil. And that's Phil Savage with the Reese's Senior Bowl. We really appreciate him joining us this afternoon.